Welcome to Garage Time. This week, I'm going to show you how to improve the airflow on the front oil cooler on this air-cooled Porsche 911.
Garage Time.
So you've probably heard me talk about a larger engine in this car, and I definitely want to upgrade the engine to something that's higher than 3 liters. That does require additional oil cooling, even though these are air-cooled cars. Actually, a bigger percentage of the cooling is done through the oil. So the front-mounted oil cooler is very important, and Porsche put a lot of oil coolers in the right front fender, and there is some airflow in there, but it's not the same as a front-mounted oil cooler, which sees direct flow due to driving. 50, 60, 100 miles an hour airflow. If it's done correctly and the ducting is done correctly, all that air has to flow through the oil cooler, and it's much more efficient. So my front RS bumper is not just for looks, it's chosen for performance. All right, the problem I'm trying to solve today is this front-mounted oil cooler. There might be room for the oil cooler to mount, but there's no room for air to efficiently flow through the oil cooler and underneath the car. So this stock latch panel is really in the way. So I have left this uncut or untrimmed or unfinished so that I can add a airflow duct just like they did in the early 70s with the RS and the RSR cars. Before I get to work today, I wanted to take a moment to thank you guys for watching. Today's episode marks 1 year of Garage Time. If you are new to my channel, welcome. My name is Tom, and I try to encourage you to get out in your garage and build something. I strive for professional results, but I am not a professional. I have learned everything by doing, and that's what I encourage you to do. This is my first Porsche 911, and I am still learning a lot. Okay, this is the area that I'm going to be cutting out, and I'm going to be welding up along the top of this here too. Now this bracket here appears to be in the way, so I'm going to remove this bracket, and also I've already removed most of this bracket, but I need to remove it all the way down to this latch panel. Okay, this is roughly the shape that I want to have. It's a curved arc going down into this gas tank side support here. I'm going to put a flange here on the top so I don't have to weld a continuous bead along the top. I can just spot weld it or seam weld it there. From the front, it still doesn't look like much because I haven't cut anything out yet. I'm going to go right to sheet metal on this one pretty early because the shape is so hard to hold with this paper. Okay, I've also free-handed a second line here. This is just kind of a curve. It's going to be kind of a bulbous shape as it comes from the front of the car. It's going to, this is the front. It's going to go out wide and then neck down at the very end. So I want to have it curve kind of in this direction and in this direction. Plus, I know that it's going to make the welding a little easier. Instead of putting a flat panel along this side, having a curved section is going to give it some shape and help prevent the distortion. At least that's the theory anyways. I'm having to redo this flange a little bit to put some curve into it. The front of the car is not as flat as I expected it. So once it's in metal, I'm able to see the gaps there. So I'm going to hammer this flat and then rebend it on a new arc. Here's a quick status update. That flange I formed on the bead roller is this flange right here. It's sandwiched together on that. So it's about a, I guess a 45-degree or so flange. And then let me show you from the inside. Okay, so from the inside, this is that flange. You can see just a little bit of daylight in between here. I need to pull it up tighter with some more clamps. But I want to have that folded over edge right even along this folded over edge here, which is part of the factory edge. And I have a little bit of curve in the panel. I just formed it over the bench, just using my hands. And you can see this kind of curve shape here. This will come straight down. Okay, I'm making this little test strip so I can get the length right here without ruining this huge piece of metal. I don't have a lot of time invested in this piece of metal, but it's the only metal I have. I'd have to go to the store to buy more. So I want to make sure that by bending this little strip I have left over, I get the length right, and then I can check it in 3 places to make sure I can mark this piece here without having to scrap it. Close. Okay, it looks like right here it's still a little bit long. At least it's too long. Better long than short. Should I force it in there? I'm just reworking these flanges a little bit to try to get it more even with that gas tank panel. Okay, here it is, the part in the car. It's not welded or anything. It's just basically holding itself in place, just the spring tension on this thing. And it fits really well right here. And then over here, there's a little bit of a gap. I'm not too worried. I think I can pull this tighter when I weld it in. This whole thing is flexible, and depending how much curve it has in it, it really affects this gap. But I did trim this a little too narrow. This needs to be a little bit less of a gap. So even if I straighten out this arc, it's still probably trimmed a little too far. It's just really difficult to try to get that perfect all the way across here. I think I'm going to drill a few holes here and put some screws or clecos in here just so I can have a reference. And I'm going to start making the walls that close out this section. And I decided to put them in at a little bit of an angle rather than go straight down. I think I'll do like a 10-degree angle so that it is a little bit more of a gentle shape. And then I'm going to trim. This is very lumpy down here on the floor. So there's one lump right there, one lump right there, and then it gets flat again. So rather than try to make a wall and then flange it over all these lumps, I think I'm just going to cut straight down and then weld the edges from the bottom. Okay, I've taken this scrap piece of sheet metal and I've sharpened the end to a point. And I have my digital level here, and I'm just going to trace on here the about a 10-degree angle on this, and I've put some die chem down on the suspension pan so I can trace the path. So that's 80 degrees right there. Just scratch a little mark. Okay, I can see the line well enough to make a cut, and I'm going to do the same here to this side. Okay, I think I can get most of this cut done from the top side using my air saw. So I'm going to drill a hole and try to do most of the cutting from here. If I need to go underneath and cut, I will. Got to drill a hole first. Okay, here's a quick status update. I got these side curved pieces in, and they are tack welded on the edge. And there's a little bit of a gap there on the bottom, but it flexes. I can just tighten it up. And then the same is true for this side. I have that piece tack welded in. So I'm going to remove this from the car and weld this on the bench. I think it's going to hold its shape okay. So I'm going to weld these curved edges here on the top half. Here's a look from underneath the car, and you can see the welds coming through on that line that I want to weld right now. And this is a pretty big mouth. More welds right there. I really like the curve shape to it. This portion here is going to be trimmed. This is overhanging, so I'm going to trim that and weld it onto the outer edges. And then the same is true for here. This is going to get edge welded and pinch welded up here and seam welded on the inside. Also, this flange here is left long, and it's going to get cut once it's welded from the inside. That's going to get trimmed and make a nice smooth transition between here. So there won't be this ledge right there. Just like that, now it's one piece. So there's the weld all along the edge. Okay, right here is where I accidentally cut this a little short when I was just guessing at the fit. So I welded this little piece on the end, and I'm going to now try again to trim it to the right size. So this will grind down with the grinder, and you won't even know it's there, but that's just the advantage of being a welder. You can always fix your mistakes. On this side, I did something a little different. I actually put a weld bead on the edge. Now this is 18 gauge metal. You won't see a lot of guys try this. This is, you know, obviously pretty thin metal, but putting a bead on the end, grind it smooth, and it just, you know, makes the part bigger. Ground everything down so the edges are smooth and filed, and I treated the back sides of these flanges with the weld through primer, and I've also marked my seam welds every 1 inch, so they line up with these seam welds, and it'll be in the same pattern as everywhere else here in the trunk area. So I need to fire up the MIG welder. Okay, everything's finally fully welded in. I've been laying on my back, welding upside down with the TIG welder. It's actually pretty difficult. I use a foot pedal, and in order to use the foot pedal when you're on your back, you got to put it between your knees and kind of squeeze it. So because of the close proximity to the wall and all that, I didn't take video of that. I know you're disappointed, but it's all in there, and I'm going to show it to you real quick. So I wanted to talk about the Patreon page. I didn't do a good job describing this, and I think I confused a lot of people. It's not a YouTube live stream on Sundays. It's really through Patreon. It's a private membership. It's really more of a conference call, a video conference call, where we spend an hour on Sundays going over what you want to go over. So maybe it's your project at home. Maybe it's something you saw me do. It's really above and beyond what you can normally get in the comments below. Now, nothing on the channel is going to change. I will continue to answer questions and comments in the comment section on YouTube, and we'll continue to post videos every Saturday, and that content is completely free. If you want to do more, like a 10-minute conversation about your question, that's what the live stream is on Sunday. We're going through, and you can email me in advance. I send out the link prior to the phone call. If you want to send pictures, documentations, drawings, sketches, ideas, I look at those. We spend, you know, maybe 10 minutes per person, and we go in depth. Other people can jump in and help. There's other people on this community that are more knowledgeable than I am. So it's a great way to get your individual questions answered with someone who you know can do the work. That's the benefit. It's on patreon.com. I'll put the link in the description below. It's $5. $5 for the month. So that gets you 4 sessions, hour long on Sunday. And we talk about whatever you want to talk about. So $5. Come on, guys, let's get it done. I want to know what you're working on. You have full access to me and email, all that. We get work done on Sundays, so I think you'll find it beneficial. Please take a look and join that way. But don't look for it on YouTube. Sorry if I confused people. It's really a video conference call, consultation with me. So please take a look at it, and let me show you what we got done. Peace.